Hello, and welcome to another edition of Grown Folks Business. Happy Thursday. The days are getting longer and it's staying nice out, so get some sun and daylight. And I know that may impact sometimes the guests that we're able to get on the show, but we get who we get, and I appreciate who shows up. And tonight, we have some mainstays, and we have uh, gracious moment and appreciation for Jay Dwayne Garnett joining us again. Always a pleasure, man. A couple weeks ago, I think we had one of the best shows that I've had the pleasure of being in, and that says a lot because I think every show was awesome. But that was primarily because of some of the things you said that I truly appreciate, because that reinforces what I think I'm here for, purposeful things. And that was the show we talked about. Are you a driver, a passenger, or a walker on the road of life? And man, that was an awesome moment. I appreciate that. That's one of the few shows that I've actually watched back. I don't watch back too many of them, but I watched that one back, sharing with a friend, and it resonated. So salute, glad to have you, Julia. Mine is Greg. I know he's a little busy at the moment, but glad to have you in the space. We're gonna be talking about feelings, and I would have just felt a little defeated if we didn't have some feminine energy here this evening. So I'm glad you're here. Bob, thanks for joining as always. Appreciate your input. As you know, just deep thinker and somebody I hold in very high regard. I'm glad you can make it this evening. Danya, you keep doing what you're doing and keeping us on the interwebs and flowing smoothly. You're steering the ship, man, spinning the wheels. Appreciate you. So tonight's topic, are feelings reality, barriers to real progress, or both and? This topic was inspired by some things I encountered this past week. And I won't get all the way into that, but it was situations where, as a practical person, I sometimes come across as unfeeling. Admittedly so. However, I'm very much about logic and continuity, and I'm very intentional in desiring to be progressive in conversation and actually solve issues. And it's just been something that I found out throughout the course of life and throughout various things that I've looked into, research, studied, and also just as a participant, active participant in life, and an active participant in communication. I came to a conclusion that at points our feelings kind of derail where we're trying to go, and they can sometimes get in the way. I want to make sure it's understood. I'm not talking about how you're feeling. Um, uh, Being too high, too low, uh, depression is real, just not feeling like yourself. That's not what I'm speaking about. Those are wholeheartedly another conversation, and I wouldn't probably dare to even have it, because you can't tell someone how they should feel or what they should be doing and to make their lives better, especially from a psychological standpoint. I'm speaking about when you're having conversations or potentially tense moments, and everything becomes derailed because the conversation becomes about how you feel or how they feel, as opposed to actually addressing and engaging in what's the goal or what's the topic of discussion or whatever you're dealing with in that very moment. So when somebody says to me, I heard what you said, but I felt like you were being a jerk about it, where are we going in that? I don't know how to engage in a conversation about something you perceive, especially if that is not my intention. Some people play games and do little, stuff to trick up the situation or throw off the person they're engaging with. I don't carry myself or do those type things. I don't carry myself in that manner. Now that's a personal, subjective thing. If I am interpreted that way, and I make it clear to the person I'm dealing with that that's not the case, then let's move towards understanding better whatever we're dealing with, as opposed to getting consumed, caught up, derailed, detoured into a realm of chasing this feeling, or this misinterpretation of what I'm trying to communicate. So just in a nutshell, that's how I intended to have this topic discussed tonight. We go where we go in this space. You guys know that, and you guys keep up. And I'm so appreciative of just the guys, the people that I get to see in these squares. Um, so Julia, I appreciate you being here. Jay, Bob, thanks. I'm always humbled by the presence of whoever shows up in the squares, and I appreciate you. So again, our feelings, reality, barriers to real progress, or both. And we can start with the topic as it exists, because I think that gets us further along. And then I have, of course, some follow-up questions, and we'll just do what we do in this space. So I'm an old-fashioned guy. Julia, ladies first in this topic. What are your thoughts on the general topic question of our feelings, reality, barriers to real progress, or both and?
Probably both and. I think they can be used positively, but Felton, especially in the catering world, there were so many times of intense pressure. And if we let our feelings dictate the situation, it would be disastrous. And I had a mentor early on. He would say, "Where are you experiencing the anxiety?" And if it was below the heart, then we needed to raise up the energy. And so he used to say, "So what is the solution?" And that gets us out of the feeling mode to the mental. So I can see how someone like yourself, who's logical and mental, those people in my way past, they were hard for me to work with because I like gooey and feely. But now, as I've gotten older, I really appreciate the mental, the Feltons and Bobs of the world that are logical and tell it like it is and not just what we want to hear. But may I read what Gregory wrote, because he did think about the topic a lot, and what he said fits. But I do think like the higher encompasses the lower. So if we are in that mental space, we can still access and deal with emotions, but it's in a positive way. It's responding to versus reacting. So here's what Gregory said. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. And of course, that passage was from Corinthians. And he said, it came to mind this morning when sitting in meditation. Have been thinking about the subject of Felton's discussion tonight, feelings. The passage just read was really helpful in unpacking the thought that was trying to come through, and that of growing up, maturing, and refining. What happens, hopefully, as we grow up, our brains mature, and we begin to use our minds to control the lower emotions and feelings. Better equipped for sorting things out, we begin responding with intelligence and love rather than reacting in fear, anger, frustration. Our words can be made into tools capable of building bridges and inspiration, healing, and creative collaboration, like grown folks and NC 100. How's that for a plug?
I'm going to extract that or get Diane to make a commercial with that. Wonderfully said, perfect from both of you guys. I appreciate those comments. I truly do. Yeah, Julia, I think my mind goes to the ideas and thoughts of a young person who's developing and understanding how to deal with the world, but not immediately. That's not how we're conditioned. We have to go through and endure and fall down and get up, make mistakes, be mean, be nice. We have to figure out a whole lot of things. And kids are sponges, and they're very, very knowledgeable of when they're wronged, when something's not fair, but they're highly emotional. and very feeling. One of my thoughts when I was coming up with this topic was in dealing with toddlers. Um, when they hurt themselves or they're not feeling good, you're chasing that feeling when you discuss it with them. It's like you hit your elbow. How's your elbow? It's not. It's my finger. It's my foot. It's my stomach. And it's this conversation is totally based on the fact that they're just not feeling right at that moment, and you're chasing what's the specific fix. And we do that very well when it comes to kids because they can't use all of the words yet. They're gonna pout and jump up and down. But when it comes to us as adults, we have the words and we have the ability to communicate. I'm just saying, let's use it. Let's use it a whole lot more than we generally do. And that sometimes, like I said, I get accused of being insensitive or unfeeling. I don't think that's the case, but sometimes perception is someone else's reality. Thank you for all of that, Julian. I look forward to some other comments as we go. Did you have more you wanted to say?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
All right. Okay, Bob, I'm coming to you. Same general question. If I need to repeat it, I will. I think it's pretty apropos. You need me to go back over it?
No, we're good.
Okay.
I definitely think honest feelings are real. Feelings used as manipulative feelings aren't real. That's a manipulation, and that's just that. Just like anything else that's not real, it's used for manipulation. I think that feelings are also valuable, but I think feelings absent context, logic, understanding are not something that can really be worked with. I think feelings need to be able to be understood, where they're coming from, what they're about, what they mean, what's driving them. And if you think about it, talk therapy is just about that. It's translating feelings into thoughts so that you can deal with them. It's translating feelings into thoughts so that you're not subordinate to them, but you can master them. You can understand them, and you can put words to them, and you can deal with them constructively. And so, from my perspective, when somebody talks about feelings generally, but they can't put logic or reason around them, I don't know what to do with that. I just don't know what to do with it. And if they can't, why can't they? Because if they can't, does that mean that does it mean that they're legitimate, or does it mean that they're, I don't know. If you can't put words or logic around it, and even as a dad, even with toddlers and little children, my job as a dad was to not dismiss the feelings, but bring words and logic and thought to those feelings such that my boys could deal with them in some constructive way, put them in perspective. You can't put feelings in perspective on feelings. Feelings feelings don't give you the tools to do that. And if you only operate in the world of feeling, then you can become a very moody, very irrational person. And so, some people are feeling prominent. Some people are thinking prominent. You and I both are thinking prominent. Feeling prominent, I'm not dismissing that, as long as you can bring the thinking component to it. I think that you've got to have both to be a compassionate, empathetic, warm human being. You've got to have both, and either can be your predominant mode, but you can't be a feeling compassionate person. You can't be a compassionate person or an empathetic person without feelings being in there. And you can't be a feelings only person without thought and logic being there. Because again, there's no basis for constructive interaction. And if we can't be constructive in our interaction, if we can't work together, the only way we can is through language and logic. If we can't work together, then we don't have anything to do.
Yeah, I appreciate all of that, Bob. And there's a clear observation that I make in a lot of situations when it comes to wrestling with the human condition and enduring life. And those are, philosophical things. Stoicism, Epicureanism. I've mentioned those in the space before. Dr. Elliott and I had a wonderful interaction and conversation on Grown Folks that was purely about various philosophies and such. And there's practices that I think we have to truly engage in. Not my practices, not your practices, but whatever gets you closer to yourself. And it's going to naturally require you to hurdle some barriers that are feelings, that are purely based on reactions that you're going to have no matter what's actually taking place. Because if you're a feeling person and that's one of your go-tos, if that's your philosophical adherence, then as you stated, Bob, it's going to be scattered moments, because one of the things I've observed in certain interactions is one of the favorite things I've heard when it gets to those feeling moments with certain people is that you're not listening. That's it's
And again, I think that's also when feelings are driving feelings can be driven by want. And if what you're hearing is inconsistent with what you want, you can sink into feelings to get away from it. And that's unwise, and that's impractical, and that's selfish.
It limits so much. So when I hear you're not listening, and so my problem in those situations is that I get what can be perceived as hostile. I'm passionate about us moving on, but it's perceived as hostile because I may say some choice words or I may raise my voice, but it's because we're going to a place that gets us nowhere. Right. And I don't want to go there. And my energy counters that so strongly that I end up meeting that thing that they painted me as, that feeling with the paint bucket title feelings, because now I come across as irrational. I come across as angry. I come across as somebody who is not listening. And that's the rub. And it becomes a situation that's not productive at all.
Well, I knew a woman one time that I said specifically to her, straightforward to her face, I do not like you. And she says to me, that's not true. I see how you look at me. I'm like, real? I mean, what do you do with that? I'm saying very specifically, I do not like you. There's no other way to interpret that. You can't throw feelings or perspective or perception into that and come up with a different answer. I do not like you. And yet, you go down that road.
That is a very strong example. And I definitely understand how you reach that conclusion. And I appreciate you sharing that. That's a great one. Let me get to Jay and get his response to this question, because yeah, I may not get to too many other questions. Jay, are your feelings reality, barriers to real progress, or both and?
I feel like I have to pre-reference this with the fact that see, I was in a special ed class in seventh grade where they thought I had a learning disability. They thought it was reading, but they found out later it was comprehension. Um, so I had a teacher who showed me how to um, basically uncover a new way of reading Miss Akpusani. So words opened up for me in seventh grade, and how I look at words are somewhat, I feel, unique. And so when I communicate, I tend to use words for their organic meaning and not um, whatever is done from a constructural standpoint or influence. And so when I saw this, when you sent it to me in a text, I was like, immediately, I was like, yeah, feelings are reality because we confuse reality with actuality. And the original definition for reality is to resemble what is real. And so your feelings paint a picture and you feel like it's reality and we act on that, but feelings are nothing more than responses to what we feel. I think where a lot of us mess up is that we feel like we have jurisdiction on how a person should feel or what that response could be. And in Felton, I'm like you. I actually suffer from emotional detachment. So I don't care if you holler, scream, or any of that. It's like, well, what did you say and what you want me to do about it? So I'm the total opposite. I don't. And so that's why I can give a good example. My kids are very expressive. You know, in your house, you might say they're disrespectful, or you might say that they're loud or rambunctious, but guess what? I haven't asked you to watch them. And that's why they're here. You know, but I allow them to express themselves. And then once they express it, I'm saying, what's a better way to say it? That's not normal for a lot of people. They usually want children to just say whatever. And some people will come to me and say, I feel like your kids disrespected you. You don't have jurisdiction on that. Only I can say if something disrespected me or not. And I think that sometimes we get caught up in the delivery and the package of things. And somewhere along the way, we feel like we have a license to dictate the actions and behaviors of a person. And truth be told, all of it is reality because it is, in my opinion, very perspective based. And guess what? As we gain more knowledge, our realities change. A lot of us, when we looked at our childhood, like, have you noticed every generation complained about their upbringing until it's compared to the next generation? It's like, I'm like, everybody said our music is different. Our music was better.
I think it's the walk to school the walk to school gets longer the older you get. Something like that. I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
And so I just feel like when we look at that, because we refuse to realize their feelings are reality and their reality to the person who envisions it, it can be a barrier because just because it's not my reality, here it is. I have a choice. Just like what Mr. Bob, I love that example because I did the same thing. I tell people like, I just don't like you. You know, and that's my go-to. You don't have to question anything with me. I tell you, I don't like you. And people say, well, no, you're joking. I promise you I'm not joking. I promise you I just don't like you. And I don't have to get upset about it. And people feel like just because your reality is telling you something different, I must agree with it. No, that's actuality. See, actuality is irrefutable. Well, we can look at this and can't argue it. Those perception-based things, I don't have to agree with that. So if you feel in reality that I like you, you know what? That's fine that you feel that way, but I'm going to move over here and I'm not going to connect with you. You know, and I feel like those are the barriers that hinder progress because we refuse to accept things as they are. Okay, you're mad. Okay, what do you being mad have to do with me moving forward? If I don't like the way you said something, I have every right in my jurisdiction to say, Julia, I don't like how you said that. But why do I have to hold that emotion and go and say, now, Felton, Miss Julia talked to me disrespectful? No, I addressed the situation. I left it alone right there. Me and Julia good after that. Why do we carry on? And so that's tend to be my problem with people, because I don't carry that weight, and I don't want nobody to carry the weight of my emotion, and I sure not going to carry the weight of somebody else's, because that's not my jurisdiction and that's not my problem. And I think that the problem is because a lot of people can't control themselves. They want to control others, and that's what hinders progress. We could all be moving if you just shut up and mind your own business.
You literally are saying something that resonates with me so much, and I use the word water. Don't give me your water, and I won't give you mine, because water's heavy. It's really heavy, and it's okay if I share it with you, and it's because you want me to, and vice versa. But I can't just give you all of my water, all of my emotion, feeling, situations, and it becomes like what Bob said. What am I going to do with that? I feel all of my feeling water. You get it, and it's just. But this is what I feel, and I know this has got to be true. It is true to you, but what does someone do with it when it hinders their reality and what's happening? That's why we find the actuality, as you spoke of. That's why we deal with logic and continuity. We find that equal footing once we remove the water. Go ahead, Jay.
I can give you a good example of this. My biological father passed last year, and a lot of people were saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I'm like, "Don't be." I mean, I mourned him when he was living. He decided at an early age to no longer be my father. And it took me almost 20 years to figure out fatherhood is a choice. Just like I had a choice to write my kid's name down and say that I was going to be the father and be there, he had a choice to walk away, and I respected it. And when I respected him, I forgave him, and I was able to move on. And it allowed me to appreciate the guy I do call my dad, who adopted me at 17, right? So when he passed, everyone was like, "Your dad died." And I was like, "I'm sorry to hear that." I was more concerned for them because he was a great uncle to them. And I had to tell my cousin, here's two truths. He was a horrible father to me, but an amazing uncle to you. And I celebrate that life for you. They got upset with me talking about, "Why I'm crying? I mourn him already. I'm good." And I don't have, and they're like, "You shouldn't have hatred in your heart. You shouldn't." I'm like, I'm not holding no grudge. I don't hate that man. I respect that man because of the decisions that he made, and it's okay with me. The kids know who their biological grandfather is, and they also know who the other ones are. But they felt because of how great of an uncle he was, that equated to being a great father, and they were two separate things.
Perfectly said in terms of a real moment where you can identify how your relationship with someone shapes and molds your perspective of that relationship, and so on and so forth. And it still not be about feelings. It's truly about the exchange, the type of react. Man, I have similar situations in my family where there's significant connectivity, and then there's onlookers that'll say, "Well, why are y'all so close? Or how do y'all get along so well? That they just do this and all they do is that." That's your experience and relationship with them. Does not mean that they're the greatest person in the world because I enjoy them in a certain way and interact with them in a certain way. Jay, I'm trying to piggyback, and I hope I'm doing a decent enough job. I think you said something that's highly significant in this realm of feelings and interactions, because they wanted to impose their good relationship onto your perspective and dynamic and the way that you encountered and dealt with the relationship from an honest perspective, honest situation. You can't give people your water. That's them trying to give you your water, and they're going to tell you how you're supposed to feel, and they're not going to believe that you're actually okay. And I'm also a person that does not believe that you give people flowers and adoration if that's not your experience with them. We love to celebrate and memorialize folks that we didn't really mess with in real life. And I think I mentioned that in this space before. I know I mentioned it to a couple of people in this space. That's not what I do. I won't say anything. I won't denigrate you, but if we didn't have that type of rapport, why make it up? That's not what I'm here for. What did Don say? Don, you put that back up for a moment. Don, you got to get back into space live now. That's a whole word. Thank you for that hand clap emoji and the support. And Don, it's always good to hear from you. I hope all is well. I'm gonna go to the next question. And again, man, it's always a pleasure being in this space with you guys. So this has already kind of been an understood thing. It came up, I think, when Bob was speaking. So I'll start with you, but you can further unpack it, or you can just leave it at a yes because you kind of already answered it. And I think we all will probably land on the same side of the coin. But can feelings be unfair to others as well as situations? So we've totally kind of unpacked that. If you kind of just want to move on, we can. But if you have a more,
I do want to speak to that because I think Jay Dwayne spoke to that particularly well, and I think that's exactly right. People are much more oriented, I think, about laying on and expecting others to own or adopt or take on their feelings. Thoughts and ideas stay in a fairer, I'll say FAIRER plane in that regard. Feelings, people really do want to put those on other people's shoulders. And it's unfair, and it's can be damaging, and it doesn't help the situation.
It's a hindrance, in my opinion, to real connections that can be made. I just it just limits us so much in terms of how much stronger our bonds, our familiar ties, all of that can be when we get consumed with what we think is going on, as opposed to really being intricate in what is actually happening without that feeling thing being a part of it.
Yeah, let me add one other thing. I think the more that we build relationships on healthy foundations, the more we then have the capacity for supporting those relationships when they're in situations of pain or anguish or whatnot that are in fact less clear. I mean, I think that we have built a relationship that's strong enough to then support each other in those circumstances that are really emotional, that we've not yet worked through, but we're just in an emotional place because of trauma or because of grief or whatever. I think that our ability to support each other in those circumstances is far better when our relationship has been built in a healthy way with truth, trust, honesty, legitimacy, etc., as opposed to that kind of squishy playing field of feelings.
Indeed. Julia, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, what Bob was describing and what Jay Dwayne was describing, we call like an astral fog. You know, it just keeps us all from seeing what's real. It's just like a big fog. And one thing that has helped that all three of you are so good at is just start asking questions. That can sometimes help people get out of that if they're not already over the deep end. You know, sometimes people are so over the emotional deep end you can't bring them out, but sometimes just, you know, Why did you think that way? How did but it's tough when people are strictly feeling and they don't have that mental body developed yet.
It can be surreal at times because there can be a real desire to really go deeper and have that more that stronger foundation in a relationship, and they just become barriers at points because you can get frustrated and become the person that you're not because you went down this feeling road with somebody else, and you're taking a risk because it's leaving behind everything that has made things make sense thus far, especially when it comes to healthy communication, healthy interaction, real bonding. You know what the practices are, but you can be so enamored with the person and you can be so enjoying the moments with them that you can get lost in those type of situations, and it just does not turn out well in most cases. I'm going to say that because some people may have found that being the feeling person is the way to go. I don't know. So the question is still the question, and then again, I think we've kind of come to a consensus. But can your feelings be unfair to others as well as situations? Julia just said a couple words. Jay, you had anything you wanted to add to that, or you want me to move on to the next question?
No, well, it was something you said at the end. I think that sometimes we underestimate feelings too, because feelings expose the organic person as well. People always say, I don't know what came over me. Oh, what came over you? What was within you? It just came out. Nothing can slip out that's not within. If it's not part of your character, it will not show itself. You just suppressed that part of your character and it came out. And I think that we don't know how to embrace that as well, because there is an expectation of decorum in human behavior and dynamics. And so one of the things when I was an exec, I would allow my employees to come in and just yell. They weren't yelling at me. Like, say, for instance, somebody frustrated you and they're really yelling at that situation. And how many times have you talked to someone and you're mad about the situation, not necessarily mad at them, but it's coming out in your tone, and they're sitting there saying, well, why you got to talk to me that way? Why you got to talk to me that way? Well, now I'm pissed at you because I'm coming to you to vent, not to judge how I'm delivering it. And I think that that's what one of the problems is like sometimes a person is just being their organic self. And because it goes against whatever you have, you're robbing them of that, and you actually are causing the problem to be more. Do you know how many people done yelled and said something is stupid, and I have said nothing? I mean, as an exec, they come and say, hey, can I talk to you? And they telling me what happened, and through their yelling and through their venting, they found their resolution, and they walk out the door. I'm like, okay, bye.
Sometimes you gotta just let that you gotta let the steam off and let the pressures build up. Just let it out. Exactly. And it's so necessary to have people that you can vent to. My grandmother was my place to just, and gosh, I miss her so much. But that was my place to vent, and she would just be in the moment with me. Sometimes you don't need to say anything. I'm guilty of being someone that wants to talk people out of stuff or up to stuff or whatever the case may be. But sometimes I need to just listen. Sometimes you do just need to be that person that's the release valve and let them get it off their chest. I totally get that. I appreciate you sharing that part.
If I can't argue with you, it's no sense in us having a relationship.
If we can't disagree sometimes and get through it, then what are we doing? So that's critically important. And it's not one of the other things that kind of grates me at times is when people say, well, we can agree to disagree. Sometimes whatever we're discussing is not something that we can agree to disagree on, because it may speak to your character and it may derail where I think we were headed, because you're willing to just be okay with something that we could work through or minimize a situation with this. We just agree to disagree notion.
It don't exist. It's just disagree.
It's just disagree. And
exactly. I want you to say that. Let's agree to disagree. No, we're just disagreeing.
Yeah, because if you're adhering to this other line of thought, and we can't find common ground, then that's exactly what we're doing. And sometimes it's just that you're gonna disagree because you're feeling some type of way. Now, this I'm gonna just disagree for the heck of it. Hey, you have taken us to a place that I definitely wanted to get to in the questions, and you said it. So I'll start with you, and then I'll come to you, Bob, and then I'll come back to you, Julia. But this is something that you actually just said that was one of my questions, and it was: do feelings limit our ability to be our authentic self? Do they limit our ability to be our authentic self? Now, again, I'm speaking about feelings the way we're talking about it, how I framed it at the beginning. So, do they limit our ability to become or to be our authentic selves? Go ahead, Jay. Start with you. Let me get this comment in. That is actually my aunt. Thank you for tuning in. Feelings can be a barrier if you do not have respect for yourself or the other person, especially if the words you spoke were not what some expected. Yeah, the expectation part. Now I'll say this for, I give away a lot of intellectual property, I think. But one of my little sayings that I think I coined, I don't know if somebody else might have had it, but a road paved with expectations is a shortcut to disappointment. I'll give that one away. That's one that I come up with many years ago, and I think it's a truism. Now, it doesn't mean you shouldn't have good expectations. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't desire positive outcomes, or wherever you going, have the expectation that you'll get there. But if your whole method and mode is expectations, then you're going to be disappointed. It's just going to happen, especially when you involve someone else, as my aunt just said. Thank you for that comment. That was when somebody else is involved, it's easy to go somewhere else. So, Jay, you got the question because you already kind of alluded to it, and you authentic self, when you said that authentic selves, that's where we went. It's do feelings limit our ability to be our authentic selves?
Well, I think your auntie addressed it even as well. I think the expectation on things limit. And it's funny because in the Love is a Parable curriculum, we actually talk about expectations, and we teach that expectations are nothing more than scenarios that we've created in our lives based on values to show us or indicators for what will happen in those instances. So the expectation is not, I don't want Julia to disrespect me. The expectation is, if someone disrespect me, what will I do? But we project it as if you better not disrespect me. But what I'm really saying is, I don't need to be around your disrespect. And so a lot of us don't really say how we really feel, and it comes up as vomit a lot of times. And I think that that's what throws people off, because it's not necessarily what you said. Sometimes it's not how you said, it's the magnitude of what all came out, and sometimes the vigor or strength behind what was said because you held it in so long. And so when you have established relationships, what really happens is the reality of that relationship has changed. And now that's taken on a new dynamic, because what we thought was confidentiality, what we thought was a safe space, no longer exists because you withheld certain things from me. And now we're operating in a space of omission. So I don't know what that is. So how do I define what that new relationship is in this moment when you are holding certain things? I can give a great example. When I started to go through the process of my divorce, I called 4 of the guys that I thought were extremely close to me. And I said, hey, I don't know what I need, but I'm going to need you guys to help me get through this. And how guys do, one guy, as soon as we got in our first argument, he said, all we do is listen to you complain all the time. I said, oh, so telling you how I'm feeling when I go through, and I really don't complain. This is what I'm dealing with. So for me, from that moment, I said, you process anything that I do or is perceived negative as complaining. So it changed the dynamics of our relationship. And the reality is, and what I said, I realize in this moment, I can no longer talk to you about what I'm going through as I go through the divorce process. Does that mean we're not friends? No. Does it mean you're not close to me? No. But he struggled with that so bad, he distanced himself from me. And I reached out and I told him, like, I still love you. But guess what? I respect the distancing because it's uncomfortable to face truth.
Yeah, there's you got to know your limitations, and you got to know when communication is not beneficial to certain situations. So you can't just vent to everyone. That's exact. You can have people on your team that are not for that role, and we know those people. And Jay, you just discovered one that just not for that role. They can be the coolest, best friends in other capacities, but they just not for that role anymore. And that's the learning moment. That's how we grow. And that makes, in my opinion, that makes your relationship stronger and that much better because there's an understanding. That's critical there. Bob, I was going to come to you next. Do feelings limit our ability to be our authentic selves?
Let me comment first on what you just were talking about, because I think that oftentimes, maybe most of the time, we find ourselves feeling things like disappointment or let down or whatnot when we discover that someone isn't the friend we thought they were, isn't the person we could rely on in a way that we wanted to, isn't a person that we thought we could rely on as we thought we could. Oftentimes I think that's want more than it is thought, but I say that because I think that discovering those truths, I'm a big truth fan. So I think discovering those truths is good. It may be hurtful at times. It may be disappointing, but if we reframe it as good because we are discovering truth, and now we know exactly where we are, exactly where we stand, we know exactly what we can rely on and what we can't. It's not that, and understanding that our reliance is our own expectation. It's not that the person promised us something. It's that we thought we had something. If they promised us something and they're betrayed, and we're betrayed by that, that's a different issue. But typically, it's us wanting something or expecting something, and then discovering that it's not there, and that's a discovery of truth. And that's fair because we've been imposing our expectations as opposed to taking in what's actually being offered. So I think all of that is something that we have a responsibility to reframe and take on as truth and own that and appreciate that now we know truth.
Indeed.
Yeah, back to the question.
Yeah.
I mean, I was responding to what y'all just talked about. Back to the question, I don't think feelings get in the way of authentic self. I think feelings can get in the way of someone becoming their best self, because I think they can be limiting. The authentic self is whatever is. The best self is still to become. And so I think that if we can, it doesn't interfere with the authentic self because it betrays exactly where somebody is, and that's their authentic place. But I do think that get in the way of the achievement of a best self.
I love that carve out. I appreciate that, Bob. That is definitely a way that can be better verbalized as a question and reinterpreted, because I am alluding to what I have thought when I created the question of an authentic self being a better self, but I get how you carved it out. That's wonderful and well said. I wanted to re-engage something Jay was saying in his earlier statement, that I think this kind of processing by certain individuals is similar. And then Julie, I'm going to come to you we're going to get out of here. But these situations where someone even functions on a level of that predicted way something's going to go. They just have in their mind, if they do this, then they know the person's going to do that. And what they create is generally what they don't want as an outcome. I mean it in the sense of coming into a situation, and I've encountered these where I know if I said this or if I did that, you were going to react this way. That's why I didn't do it. And you find that out after you've confirmed what they said was going to happen, but they did everything to make that happen because you didn't get the information, as Jay was speaking of. You didn't get the exact situation. You didn't get told at the point that you should have, hey man, I'm not the person that you should be sharing all this stuff with. Maybe you should go. You thinking you're making progress and there's going to be some either good advice or you just got that release valve. And then you find out, why didn't you just tell me this earlier on? Because the way I found out about it is it's created by you're not sharing information that I could have benefited from. So don't drag people into situations without fully disclosing what's really on your mind or what you're really trying to accomplish or what have you, and then expect them to just snap into the way that you think they should have responded in the situation when they were not fully informed. I said a lot there. I hope that is processed in the way that I intended to be, but just have some honest, truthful engagement. And even if there's feelings involved in that, you'll see more benefit from having that truthful, honest engagement. And don't be scared to get your feelings hurt. My grandmother, I knew she wasn't going anywhere. My mother, I know that she's not going with my sister. We hurt each other's feelings sometimes, but we're not going anywhere. So let's just build stronger relationships. Truthfully. Julia, Jay, you had something you want to throw in? Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Felton. I will say, like, that's my pet peeve. Don't assume how I'm going to respond to something. Give me an opportunity to process it myself. Don't make the decision for me. And when we rob people of those decisions, sometimes it's just the principle and it's not a feeling. It's the principle of the matter. And we have to address that sometimes. Like if I have things in place, you don't have jurisdiction in that. And so robbing me of an opportunity to respond or to react to a situation because you put your own things in place is a form of disrespect, in my opinion.
It's very disingenuous, and it limits again the potential for a stronger bond and a more meaningful relationship. So I wasn't speaking another language. You understood exactly what I was saying and all I said. I appreciate that. Glad you could respond the way you did and probably help somebody else understand. Thank you for that. Julia, you want to chime in and we're going to get ready to wind it down and wrap it up because I got one other question that won't take long. But Julia, do feelings limit our ability to be authentic selves? And you can throw in that carve out that Bob presented so nicely, our best authentic self or our best version of myself.
Yeah, but I think more want to comment on Jay, Dwayne, and Bob that if we have built the foundation of a good relationship, then we may know more. Like we wouldn't be where Jay, Dwayne was with that person. I mean, somebody you think you really know, and that's one of the advantages of getting older. And Bob, we've talked about this, that, having a lot of friends and it's not important anymore. It's you want to be with those people that you trust, that you can count on. And that if you are in a place of needing to share feelings, then you can do that. I think feelings can get in the way of us being our authentic self if just depending on what those feelings are. If they're positive and constructive, then they might help us get there. But if they're not, if they don't serve a purpose, I'm all about intention and serving a purpose. If they don't do that, then let them go. The other thing is, as we get older, we don't take things personally. Like Jay Dwayne said, you know, I'm still friends with that guy. He's not as close to me, but I'm still friends with him. So things just aren't as personal as they used to be. So great conversation. Thank you, Felton.
Oh yeah, and you're a part of it, so thank you. Yeah, you're gonna have me going down the for agreement road, but yeah, don't take things personally. Man, why? What does it benefit you? Everybody can be having a bad moment, bad day. Just don't take it personal. Um, I'm going to say this last question is purely rhetorical, so you don't have to answer. But I just wanted to kind of bookend this conversation with this observation. And if you have any last words, just get them together and make them short. But I'll come back around and I'll see after I present this rhetorical question. Do doctors give you a hug after every examination? They don't. If we approach certain situations like doctors do and just try to get to the solution without the emotion, they don't give you a hug, they don't cry with you, they tell you what's right or what's wrong with your body, and this is what you need to do to fix it. And we got to get you started on this. You need to walk more, you need to get some exercise, you need this treatment, that treatment. They're very practical. And while it may upset us for a moment and you may get a pat or sometimes you might get a hug if it's really some bad news, but it doesn't have to be the bad news. And it doesn't have to be an overly emotional feeling reaction. It can be practical. Let's finish. Let's get something going and let's finish the task we got at hand and let's be progressive together. So, sometimes everybody needs to take a moment, get a hug, but then let's continue on and fix whatever the problem or the issue is. So no, doctors don't generally give out hugs when they examine you. They generally say, hey, you need to do this stuff and that stuff, and then you'll be better. So I want to leave that there. It was a purely rhetorical question. Nobody needs to answer. Anybody have any final words before we get out of here, or can I get a hand wave and we can say bye together? Bye.
I am going to say one thing. I think we should always expect the practical, and then we should expect the hugs from where the hugs ought to come from.
Great way to crystallize that. Put Don's comment back up for me, Don. You will give her the last word, Bob. Great way to end the show vocally. Don says, I really enjoyed the conversation on tonight. Great points of views and the heart. We love you too, Don. Hopefully you can get back in the squares pretty soon. Thank you all. Thanks, Jay. Thanks, Bob, Julia, Gregory, somewhere in there. I appreciate his just sharing his thoughts, writing that down. That means the world that he thought enough of this show to do that. Thank you guys so much. Danya, appreciate all you do in the space. Everyone have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Take care. Be good.